It is time to open up the Week 12 Peacock and Williamson mailbag. What are the biggest surprises so far in this 2024 season through 11 weeks and gearing up for that potential Bill Belichick head coach sweepstakes in the 2025 offseason, and a whole lot more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there. And welcome to all the new daily listeners. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5. Okay, we are opening up the mailbag as we do weekly here on the program. Always get those questions in at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on the socials, or drop a question in the YouTube comments section. I want to start with a question from Mark. And he says, what are the biggest surprises for you guys so far this NFL season? I've got a couple of surprises. Matt, what are your biggest surprises so far this season through 11 weeks?
I would say the Niners are high on the list. I thought you had a tough time convincing me that they'd be 500 on November 21st. I would also say the Cardinals, but I had a lot of respect for that coaching staff coming into the season. But I definitely would not have said, "Ooh, wow, they're first place in a pretty good division." That has me surprised. There's no question about that. A little of the luster has come off the Vikes, but they're still 8-2, and they're top 6 in power ranks. And I thought they were good, not great. And I'm not sure that they're great, but they've definitely outkicked their coverage. Dallas and Washington in the East, I would have thought they were be in totally different spots. And I would say the biggest surprise of the whole league is the Commanders to me. Denver's a little bit of a surprise, but at 6-5 and being 8-9 last year, Peyton is now 500 as a Broncos coach without a ton of talent. So that's surprising. I really thought Jacksonville would be not pathetic, and they're really pathetic.
Yeah.
The Browns don't blow me away. I mean, I thought they were going to be a playoff contender, but Watson to me is such a cancer on and off the field that I can't say I'm blown away by that. Slight mild surprise with Miami and the Jets not being as good as they are. I mean, there's 5 teams in the AFC that I thought would be serious contenders right now that are either laughable or holding on for dear life, including Cincinnati. That's the last one I want to mention too.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of them.
I picked half the league.
Right. Yeah. Because, let's go to the AFC East because, I'm not surprised the Buffalo Bills are good. I am surprised that the Miami Dolphins have not only been not competitive, they've just been a disaster. And, and I thought they had an opportunity to go compete and continue to climb towards the Bills, not completely fall off. I know Tua was a big part of that, but that's not the only reason. They've been bad with Tua as well, or at least
let me take that a step further. I mean, they were so bad without Tua, that surprised me. The worst team in the league without Tua, who's not Mahomes,
Yeah. Did everyone suddenly become have a 4.8 40 instead of a 4.3 40 on that team?
Right.
Couldn't get the ball in anybody's hands. So they've been obviously a disappointment, but they get a pass with the quarterback being hurt, even though it's still been worse than I thought with Tua. And then obviously the Jets. I thought the Jets with even if you told me how Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, I'd be like, cool, that's better than what they had at quarterback. And they haven't been able to play well on defense. Obviously a couple of injuries and a holdout on the defensive line has hurt them quite a bit as well. It's been just an coaches and GMs getting fired there. I thought they were going to be a playoff team with even an average, worse than expected Aaron Rodgers, which he has been worse than expected, I think. And so that's been, a disaster, obviously, for the Jets. And you mentioned a couple of big ones in the NFC, too, with Washington and the Cardinals. The Cardinals I thought were well coached. and the offense would start to look better, but they're still banking on a rookie wide receiver, and Kyler Murray is like, let's really see who he is now. And I didn't think the defense would be even close to ready. The defense has been so much better than I thought they were going to be. And yeah, you look at the NFC West, and I think most people's preseason predictions had Niners 1 and Cards 4, and that's completely flipped right now with tiebreakers going into week 12. And we'll talk about our picks and make our picks a little bit later in the week, but tomorrow's show. But the 49ers being a team that could be knocked out essentially from the playoffs in week 12 if they lose and the Cardinals win, like that gap starts to get really big, because I don't know if there's an opportunity for one of the other teams that doesn't win the West to get a wild card spot, West. Yeah, just how quick the Washington thing has gone, and like Cliff Kingsbury and it's like Dan Quinn, okay, some retread coaches. Is this really going to work? You got to, and the rookie quarterback being good right away is always something. It's like, wow, okay. They're basically doing what the Texans did last year, and we'll see if the plexiglass principle hits them, right? And I love hearing you talk about that. But right now, I mean, they've been pretty phenomenal. And the Cowboys, I didn't expect them to be good, but they've been worse than I even expected. And now they're doing the quarterback thing like the Dolphins are, where it's like, geez, and Jaguars in the same boat. It's like, wow, okay. Not only are you bad already with your star quarterback, you're really terrible with whatever else you're going to have, and coach is fired, and it's a bad situation.
Yeah, and we touched on a lot of the league there, and we don't have crystal balls. A lot of these are surprising. Cincinnati maybe at the top of the list, because I actually put some money on Burrow to be MVP, and he's playing like it, but the rest of the team isn't holding up. And I want to piggyback off what you said about the Jets, because the word I used for the Jets going into the season 8,000 times was fragile. They're old, they don't have a lot of depth, but they're putting all their chips in the middle. And I thought by now they would be near the top of the league, but can they hold on with their age and their injury history? But instead, they just crumbled. And it's not even because of I don't know. I was going to say I was going to blame that the players aren't necessarily bad, but they're not good either. Everyone's to blame. Yeah.
Yeah. Depth has been a problem for the Jets. I think that's a good lesson for everybody. Top heavy can turn just heavy real quick, because you lose a couple guys and all of a sudden, oh no. The Vikings is an interesting one. If you had their wins and losses in a different order, I don't think they'd be that shocking, because they've come down to earth a little bit from the super hot start, but they've still been a little bit better than I thought. And I think
their last month, I think, is more reflective of what they are than how they started the season on a tear,
which is still fine. So speaking of the Cowboys, we got a question about Bill Belichick. And one of the questions was, why don't the Jaguars or the Cowboys or whoever's going to be in on it, why don't they fire their coaches and hire Bill Belichick, get their new coach in before the season? Why don't they do that right now? What do you think about that? And what do you think about the ensuing potential sweepstakes for Bill Belichick? Where do you think he's going to end up? Do you think he's going to come back to being head coach in the NFL?
I think he will. I think the all-time win thing is important to him. I think he's going to be this year's Harbaugh, where he can probably make his choice based on whoever he wants to coach, whether that's Lawrence in a Herbert-like fashion or Dak, or I'm mostly talking quarterback, but he's obviously going to be very, very aware of how much power do I have, who do I answer to, what's the dysfunction of this organization, so he'll be really tied in for those things. And I would bet, yes, he is a coach for an NFL team next year. Now, I'm not making fun of this question, but there's too many logistics involved. You have to play a game. Like, if you hired him even on a bye week, the Jags are on a bye, there's no way you could have a team close to being ready 2 Sundays for now. Would he have to inherit the running back coach who he doesn't know? There's no way you can really do that.
No.
Now,
it doesn't make you better sooner next year to get him in this year. Let the current coach tank it out, then you take over and implement your stuff in the offseason. Your guys, your coaches. There's just too much to change in the middle of the season. Let them crash and burn before you take over.
I don't think this is illegal, because I think that you can do whatever you want in the coaching world. I know there's no salary cap, obviously, for coaches, but could Mr. Khan call up Belichick and say, I want you to be our coach next year. Let's make a deal now. And they agree, handshake agreement, or they sign a contract. and Bill has an office in the Jacksonville building. You know,
we've been asked this question about how does it help your team to fire your coaches mid-season instead of waiting until the offseason? And the answer is getting a head start on your coach interviews, because you do have to satisfy that would be illegal what you just said, because there's no, you wouldn't satisfy the Rooney Rule and you wouldn't be going through the entire process. True. So if you want to get a head start and you want to start making those calls, you got to fire your head coach so you can actually start interviewing people, right?
But could I'm not sure that the Eagles even know this answer. Could they call him the VP of football operation? Just hire him to be their chef or be their groundskeeper. You know what I mean? Like, make him an employee.
I think there would be some consequences or some investigating in that case.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. The all-time winningest coach ever. I mean, like, right. I'm joking about the groundskeeper, but it'd be something football, like president of football operations, and basically say he's going to be our next head coach, but he's here evaluating for now. I don't know.
That would be illegal by the rules.
That has to be illegal because no one's ever done it, right?
Yeah. But you could still go through the process of interviewing and then decide, we're going to make him head coach and not just football czar or whatever.
Yeah. But you can't get ready for a game now. I mean, like, right. You can't. Yeah. You got to play. It's not fair to the players either.
Right. There's people who bought tickets, and there's, livelihoods at stakes, and there's other people that need to earn paychecks, and, players need to earn spots next year, and coaches that need to figure things out. Next, though, we've been asked about this, and it's the most comical thing I've heard this week about what the Dallas Cowboys should do. Is Jared Goff in the MVP conversation, and who are the legit Super Bowl contenders in the NFL? And one sleeper team next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Built Rewards. With the seasons changing, I'm already dreaming of some vacations and some getaways, maybe some warm weather getaways next summer. But I've got some ski vacation. I'm trying to find hotels and book a Tahoe January vacation, maybe the week before the Super Bowl, maybe February after the Super Bowl, after the football season dies down for me. And I love using points for travel, and I'm always looking for ways to get more to book my next flight, book my next hotel. Here's a little hack for you. Built lets you earn points on rent payments and redeem them toward flights, hotels, and a lot more. One of your biggest investments should be to get you more than just a roof over your head. So let me explain. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent payments and your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels, airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points towards. So if you're not earning points on your rent, why not? Start earning points on your rent today. You're already paying rent, so join Built.com /Locked On NFL. That's join Built, JOINBILT.com/Locked On NFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join Built.com /Locked On NFL to start earning points on your rent payments today. This episode also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And of course, when we reference any lines here and we talk about what we're going to put our money on during the football season, we are referencing those lines from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Live in-game betting, tons of props every single week, season-long bets, futures bets, who's the next coach to be fired, who's going to be the coach of the year, and who's going to be the MVP. That's a topic we're going to hit in just a moment. Just visit FanDuel.com there's no slash anymore. It's just go to FanDuel.com. That's all you got to do to join today. Download the app. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So there's one of the talking heads in the world said something that I thought was so asinine, and now we're getting questions about it. So what do you think about, and apologies to the question asker because I now cannot find it. Here it is. It's from Naz. And he says, if you're Jerry Jones, are you able to draft Shedeur Sanders and go hire Deion Sanders and bring back one of your old players to run the show for you in Dallas. Do you think that Jerry Jones could pull it off? And would you try to pull that off if you're Jerry Jones, Matt?
I think he could pull it off. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea or something I would pursue, especially after just giving Dak Prescott a contract. But I guess you could trade him for multiple assets. Now, that's an aside. I would not keep Dak and make this approach. That seems ludicrous to me.
And monetarily, you can't. You just paid Dak, so that's already crazy.
All right. Now, I'll plead some ignorance. Is Sanders, the quarterback, good enough to do that with? I don't get the impression he is. That he's one of the guys from last year. I mean, May or Daniel, in terms of I want to build a franchise around him. And Deion seems like I don't want to say interesting because that's a shortcut. I mean, an asset. I mean, I think that he brings something to the table. But my hunch is, as a former college staffer, that he is an amazing recruiter. How could he not be? But is he a leader of grown men / CEO? I can't imagine he is.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple levels.
I don't know.
The original, one of the original ideas was brought out by somebody, and I don't even want to tell you the name. I'm sure some people have heard it because it's not worth going and listening to. But the idea was go get Deion Sanders, go trade everything to go up in the draft and get your quarterback in Shadur Sanders, and that's what you're building around going forward. And if you have to trade 3 first-round picks and Michael Parsons to do it, which is the kicker of this whole idea.
Boy.
It's like, what are we even doing? First, it's just completely asinine. Beyond everything else, logistically, you already paid Dak. Like, Dak is the quarterback, period.
Right.
No matter who the coach and receivers are and, whatever. Contractually, you just paid him a huge contract. And beyond that, what Deion Sanders has done to be successful in college, does that even work in the NFL? The answer is no right now.
No.
He could be potentially a good, NFL coach. I don't know. He knows football clearly. He doesn't call offensive or defensive plays for his college team. What he has done to build up Colorado and Jackson State before that, that's not how you do it in the NFL. So would he be a good coach at some point? Will he get hired? I have no idea, but the evidence isn't there. It's like, oh, what he's doing is like, he's going to be the next, NFL. And Shadur Sanders, like, we go through this every offseason, Matt, with the draft. Like, okay, famous name quarterback in college, he's going to be awesome. And all of a sudden, actually he ends up being a 3rd-round pick, it's like, I don't even know if Shadur Sanders is that guy that you would trade up for in the draft. Could he be there where the Dallas Cowboys are going to draft and not have to trade up for him? Maybe. Like, is he going to be the number 1 pick? Maybe. Is he going to be?
I mean, they're 3-7. They've lost 5 in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be picking 25th.
Our NFL evaluators looking at Shadur Sanders like, I can't wait to draft this guy and build my team around him and draft him number 1 overall. I don't know. Maybe he ends up being that guy. And I see him in first rounds of mock drafts. But, this isn't like the way it felt with Caleb Williams last year or with, Andrew Luck, or it's not one of those situations where it'd be like, oh, okay, I can see why someone would be like, let's trade a whole bunch of draft picks to go up and get this guy who everyone thinks is generational. Like, nobody's talking that way about Shadur Sanders right now. And I haven't dove into the Shadur Sanders film yet. From what I've seen of him, stuff to work with and good player, could be a good NFL player. Am I trading the farm to go get this guy right now? Like, I don't know. The whole idea is absolutely insane. So I want to shut that down right now.
I'm not saying Jerry Jones doesn't do it though, but I still think the whole thing's insane.
So if anybody's going to do it, it could be him.
Yeah, and it would sell tickets and all that good stuff. But lastly, Sanders, the quarterback, what I understand is he's fighting 4 or 5 other guys to be QB1 in a bad QB class. Like, he wouldn't compete with May or Daniels, let alone Williams last year. I mean, he's probably better than Pickett in terms of like first overall quarterbacks, but he's closer to that than he is Drake May.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been a top 3 pick in last year's draft.
No chance.
Right. How about this one? How many teams are legit Super Bowl contenders, Matt?
All right, I'm going to hijack this real quick.
Okay.
So your Niners are the perfect example because I was a creative writing major. I always use this analogy that if I turned in a creatively written art assignment, would my teacher be like, the professor be like, no, this is too made up, throw it away.
Yeah.
So I think I could write a story where the Niners are a legit Super Bowl contender. Now, I think their D-line isn't what it used to be, and I don't need to tell you their faults, but I could write a story where come playoff time, they're eligible for the dance and they're scary. You take over the Steelers and we'll go from there.
Okay. You completely nailed it with the 49ers. And I just did a crossover for the Niners Packers with Peter Bukowski. And basically the thing was, and Peter's like, well, you know, I don't want to have to play the Niners. Let's put them away here because I don't want to have the Packers have to play the Niners again in January. And my response to that was, you definitely don't want to play the Niners in January. If the Niners are playing in January, period, that means some kind of switch got flipped.
Yep.
And they won the division. And, you know, so that's kind of it. And if the Niners are in the playoffs, they're probably a team you don't want to play because they figured some things out, right? And they still got a ton of talent across the roster. Now, they might not even get to the playoffs because they've got some stuff to do. But you get the Packers and Bills and they win those 2 games, all of a sudden we're talking about the Niners a lot different in 2 weeks than we are right now.
The one other team I would say that about is the Bengals. If they get to the playoffs, they've done a lot right between now and then, and they're scary. But I don't think they will get to the playoffs.
Yeah, they made their level of difficulty because of the first 11 weeks so hard that it's probably unlikely. And if they're able to pull that off, then that is a scary thing.
Are the Steelers a Super Bowl contender from an unbiased source?
I think that's an easy yes. I mean, they just beat a team that we would all probably agree the Ravens being a Super Bowl contender, and you just beat them. They are playing very good defense. They've got plenty on offense from what we've seen. Their ceiling has absolutely been raised from the play from Russell Wilson. So I think you absolutely have to talk about the Steelers as being a Super Bowl contender. Would I bet on them beating the other teams in the AFC to be in the Super Bowl?
Right.
Probably
go to Buffalo
not.
Or Kansas City or
Yeah. And then let's finish this question in a second, and we'll name the rest of them. But I would say the Bengals and Niners are those like, yes, but a lot has to happen.
I could write the story, but it's almost not believable. You know, right?
Steelers are an absolute yes. I think there's some other difficult teams that I would probably put on the no side of things that maybe have a similar or as good a record as the Niners and the Bengals do. And then there's some obvious yeses. Let's get to those next.
Okay.
The next segment of today's edition of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. This month is all about gratitude. And along with the person that you might want to shout out the most in your life, and I always have gratitude, and I always say this, I have gratitude talking with Matt Williamson every day on the network, Locked On 49ers, my co-host Eric Crocker, and I talk to these guys every day, and sometimes I don't talk to anybody more than I talk to Williamson and Crocker, right? So I better like these guys, and I have fun talking ball every day, and it helps me. It's a little bit of therapy, just talking ball and then having a little bit of fun doing these conversations. I'm sure there's another person in your life that you don't get to thank enough, no matter what they are for you in your life. But there's also another person you need to thank, yourselves. It's something sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying to make our best life and make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't always easy. So here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And just fill out a brief questionnaire. Couldn't be easier. You get matched with a licensed therapist and you're off and running. And if you don't jive with your therapist, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right.
Contenders in a minute, but I got to jump in after that ad read there about, us talking every day and all that. So my co-host, I referenced him the other day, Dale Lawley, and I do a Steelers show for Steelers.com called The Drive, and we've been doing it, 6 or 7 years. And I came to the conclusion that Dale is the person I have peed with the most in my entire life. Because we either walk in together, hit the urinal before a 2-hour show, or I do that alone, drink a ton of coffee, and we walk out together and we pee every time. So I've joked 1,000 times. I'm like, I don't know who's second on the list, but you're number one on most peed with friend.
If you ever go to a radio studio, the bathrooms aren't like by the sales department. There might be a bathroom there too, but there's always bathrooms right next to the studios because you got to be in and out quick. And it's
the guys between segments. Yeah. You see them running. Right. Yeah.
It's different doing a 4-hour radio show than it is doing a podcast that lasts a half hour or an hour. You can hold it, you can get in and out, and you've got plenty of time. And all right, let's hold on. Let's not hit record yet. There's a clock. And When the clock strikes,
you can't ever be late for work.
Mics are on in terrestrial radio business. So
the local radio station that's been here my whole life is always playing, and it's classic rock, and AC/DC's on at least 50% of my P's. If not, it's Guns N' Roses or Journey or it's the same songs I've heard my entire life. It's great.
All right, feel free to disagree. Disagree with me if you want. I said the Steelers are a contender. Chiefs, Bills in the AFC clearly are. Baltimore Ravens right now, by the way, would be the 6th seed at 7-4. I still think they are a Super Bowl contender.
Yes.
So
what about Houston?
Well, here's the thing. So I would
go. Sorry.
Broncos, no. Colts, no.
Chargers, no.
And then we start getting to some 4-win teams where everybody's a no for me. The Bengals are like the what if, but man, that's so difficult. I'd probably
you really got to squint.
Right.
Houston's tough for me. The O-line is really worrisome.
Well, so the Texans and the Chargers are 7-win teams. They would be the 4 and 5 seed right now, respectively.
I'm no on Chargers. Really have to squint on Texans.
I think I'm no on both, although the Texans, when you have a star quarterback and a really good defense like that and a great head coach, like that's the recipe. And I'm on board with all that. But something's not quite there for me with them this year. Could they find it? There's a lot of season left, maybe. But right now, I would say they're sub those other teams that I would say for sure yes on. I would almost, even though, so the Texans are 7-4, the Bengals are 4-7. Who
would you rather play in the playoffs?
I would, I'd say probably the Texans have a better shot, obviously, but I'd rather play the Texans than say the Niners if we start looking at the NFC. And we kind of drew that picture a minute ago. The other two teams in the NFC West that are, tied with the Niners at 5-5, Rams and Seahawks? No. Washington Commanders?
No.
So that brings Falcons?
No.
Okay. Cardinals?
No.
All right. So we're on board with all that. So that means the yeses are potentially Vikings, Packers, Lions, Eagles. Lions for sure, yes.
Yes.
What about the other three? Are they just slam dunk yeses for you? Eagles?
Philly is.
Okay. So Eagles, Vikings, Packers?
Packers are ahead of the Texans and probably about Steeler level. So, yes.
Yeah. I would say, okay, I could buy that. Steelers versus Packers.
Who would you rather play in the first round?
Right. In
Green Bay.
Yeah, like whoever's at home is favored by a couple points. Right. Yeah.
I'm going to say no on the Vikes, though, is the last one. Can they win the Super Bowl?
They're 8-2. Like saying no on an 8-2 team, like same question, Vikings and Steelers. So you would rank.
That's why I almost didn't have the Steelers. I don't know if they can win 3 playoff games.
Oh, so you're okay. So
maybe
a no on the Steelers and the Vikings and the Packers.
Vikings are last of those 3, though. And maybe I'd put Houston in that level too, and Houston would be below all of them.
Ooh, that's a good one. So you're ranking. You would rank them,
but I don't think they will. I mean, not that they will. We're not predicting.
You're right.
I definitely give the Steelers the best chance. A wild card team comes to Pittsburgh, they get ground to dust, and then they have to go to Buffalo or Kansas City, though, and it's like, ooh, and then you got to do it again. Ooh.
So you're betting on who of these 4 teams is going to win the Super Bowl, and you would go Steelers, Packers, Texans, Vikings in that order?
Yes.
I don't know if I'd fight you on that. I can't fight you, I don't think. I think that's the right order.
I mean, I have a hard time believing Darnold can win the Super Bowl this year. I'm not saying Russ Wilson can, but he has. And their formula is just a little more quarterback friendly.
A team that we jumped over. We had a question about the Indianapolis Colts with the way Anthony Richardson played last week. Are the Colts that sleeper team that nobody wants to play right now? And could they sneak in and get one of these wild card spots in the AFC? They're what, 5-6 right now going into week 12.
Yes to the second question. I know it's one game, but it was a really, really encouraging performance from Richardson. It looks like a totally different player. And if you get a facsimile of that the rest of the way, I do believe their offense with a really good offensive-minded head coach can be one of the best in the league going forward. I don't think that's insanity. I don't see any real weaknesses personnel-wise, and I think he's a great schemer. I don't think he's a great head coach, and I think their defense is way too easy to play against. So I think their ceiling is they sneak in as a wild card and they upset the Steelers or Houston in round 1, something like that, and then get stomped by the Bills,
By the way, appreciate Josh for one of the questions there. Naz, I think we already shouted out. Let's see.
Josh was a madman today.
Oh, yeah. Josh is always all over. He's the Jerry Rice of question askers. So prolific. He is on the question asking circuit. I would put the Colts and the Bears, the AFC and NFC version of a team that they're not going to do anything this year. But they'd be like a good spoiler team. Like they're that spoiler team down the stretch where you see them on schedule, like, okay, not too worried about this game. And like, oh man, we lost to this game. They knocked us out of the playoffs because we lost to the Colts or we lost to the Bears.
They're the team that we talk about all off season that finished the season strong and their quarterback looks good. And they added this linebacker that, is going to put them over the top,
Yep, absolutely. That is exactly what's going to happen in the next 6 simply, Jared Goff, should he be in consideration for MVP of the NFL?
I just never equate him that way. I mean, they won a game where he threw 5 picks. I mean, that's not great, but that's only one game. 1 week ago, I would have given it to Lamar, and it's only one game against the Steelers, and he always struggles against them, but he's still ahead of Goff on my pecking order. Allen would be 1, although I think Allen beating the Chiefs, Lamar losing to the Steelers was enough for me to just edge Allen over Lamar. They would have been 1 and 2. Now they're 2 and 1. I guess Goff is 3, but we mentioned him earlier. Burrow's playing as well or better than all of them, but you can't give it to him if he doesn't make the playoffs. If somehow he can get that team to the playoffs, I think he has a case.
When you're the quarterback of the best team in the NFL, and if the Lions keep playing like they're playing right now, he will absolutely be in consideration. I don't think just because of what people feel about him because of priors. I mean, he would have to go pretty crazy to win over
those
Josh Allen and Lamar and all the names you want to list. He might even have a tough time winning over like Derrick Henry.
I know, or Barkley,
right?
I mean, a couple of those type of guys. Or, frankly, I'm not sure Mahomes is done writing his case either. Like, what if they only lose one more game and he starts throwing 3 touchdowns a game and ends up with 40 or whatever? What if Mahomes? This is a bad game to play, but what if Burrow was a Lion?
Right.
That'd be ridiculous.
Or if the Chargers keep winning games and here's the path.
We've been asked about Herbert. I don't think he's out of it.
Right. And because of what I don't think he'll win, but because of what the talent around him at receiver and what he's done. And, that would probably get some consideration. The path for Goff is the Ravens need to screw this up and not make the playoffs. And Goff is rolling and super high efficiency and has the Lions with the 1 seed by a mile in the NFC. I think it might start to get pretty tough there because then it becomes like Goff versus Josh Allen, and Josh Allen maybe numbers wise won't quite be in a place where it's a slam dunk for him. Then I think
he doesn't have the highlight tape. Josh Allen scrambles on 4th and 2 or whatever, and it's not an MVP. You have to be dynamic to win the MVP nowadays. It's not just pocket passer, throw the ball around. And I think Goff's really good. It makes it sound like I think he stinks. I think he's really, really good, and he's having a phenomenal season. I just don't think that's the mold of today's NFL MVP.
And again, this is the voting thing. It's in the eyes and the minds of the voters. And we talked about this with the Hall of Fame stuff. It's like Steve Smith Sr. has a better PR team than Torrey Holt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get more votes. And that's just the way Goff needs a better PR team.
Yeah. And
he's
just not as dynamic of a player, right?
He's an editor for his highlight package.
There you go. His supporting cast is a little too good.
Mm-hmm.
He needs a worse offensive line. And then I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Thanks, everybody, for your questions. Appreciate them. As always, apologies to the great questions we did not get to. Keep them coming for next week's mailbag at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow. Making picks for week 12 right here, Peacock and Williamson.